Commander Riven Voss stood on the bridge, staring out into the vast maw of space, wondering how he'd end up explaining this one in his inevitable report. "It's big," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "And that's not just my professional assessment as a master of pointing out the obvious." Lyra Wans, the ship's tech specialist, was hunched over a console, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface like a pianist at a recital no one wanted to attend. "It's not just big, Riven. It's mammoth, colossal, ginormous. Pick your favorite synonym." Riven ran a hand through his hair, which had the same styling as a neglected broom. "And abandoned," he added, as if that little tidbit would somehow make the alien Dreadnaught less terrifying. "Operational, though, which is always comforting." Lyra snorted, comforting like a warm blanket on a bed of nails. Riven glanced around at the rest of the crew, a ragtag band of misfits thrown together by the whims of a universe that clearly had it out for them. There was Carter, the engineer, who had a penchant for fixing things with duct tape and swearing. And then there were the twin navigators, Vex and Nova, who shared one brain cell between them and still managed to outperform most computers. Rounding out the crew was Dr. Kelm, a medic with the bedside manner of a cactus. "So," Riven said, addressing them all, "anyone got any bright ideas about what to do with our big, scary space Hulk?" "We could sell it," Carter suggested, only half joking. "There's gotta be someone out there dumb enough to buy an antique the size of a small moon." Or, Vex chimed in, "We could just leave it alone and pretend we never saw it." "Great plan, except for the part where it's sitting smack dab in the middle of contested space," Nova added, nose buried in navigation charts. "We leave it and someone else finds it, someone less friendly." Dr. Kelm, who had been silently contemplating the universe's many ways to kill them all, finally spoke up. "Why don't we just poke around a bit? Worst case scenario, we wake up some ancient horror and die horribly. Best case, we find something shiny." Riven sighed. "Well, when you put it like that, how can I resist?" He turned to Lyra. "Get us a closer look, but keep the shields up. I don't want any surprises." "Aye, aye, Captain," Lyra responded, tapping away at her console. "Bringing us in for a nice, friendly approach. We can wave hello." The ship, affectionately dubbed the Tumbleweed, though why anyone would name a spaceship that was one of those questions best left unasked, drifted closer to the alien Dreadnaught. The massive vessel loomed ahead, its silhouette a jagged mess of turrets, antennas, and inexplicable protrusions that probably served a purpose only an alien engineer could understand. "I'm getting some power readings," Lyra announced, her voice tinged with both excitement and trepidation. "Not enough to blow us to pieces, but enough to suggest it's not as dead as it looks." "Fantastic," Riven replied dryly. "A not-so-dead ship. Just what I always wanted for my collection of nightmares." As they neared the Dreadnaught, the Tumbleweed systems began picking up strange signals, faint, intermittent, like a distant echo of something long forgotten. "Getting anything on comms?" Riven asked. Carter, who was now fiddling with a decrepit pair of headphones, frowned. "Static mostly, but there's something, some kind of pattern." Lyra's eyes widened. "Could be a distress signal, or a warning, or a party invitation," Carter quipped. Riven glanced at the crew, weighing their options. "All right, let's gear up, we're going over there." "To investigate or to die gloriously?" Vex questioned. "Whichever comes first," Riven replied with a grim smile. They gathered in the airlock, each of them wearing the standard issue EVA suits, bulky, uncomfortable, and about as stylish as a square wheel. "Remember," Riven said as they checked their gear, "we're just poking around. In, out, no heroic nonsense." "Oh, good," Nova said, adjusting her helmet. "I'd hate to accidentally save the day." The airlock cycled, and they stepped out into the void. Magnetic boots clamped onto the Dreadnaught's surface with a series of dull thuds, the only sound in an otherwise silent expanse. "Kinda eerie, isn't it?" Lyra remarked, her voice crackling over the comms. "Eerie like a clown convention in a ghost town," Carter agreed. As they made their way across the hull, Riven couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by something living necessarily, but by the ship itself, a hulking ancient beast with secrets to keep. "Found an entry point," Vex called out, stopping next to what looked like an airlock. "Looks operational." "Let's not keep our mysterious hosts waiting," Riven said, waving them forward. The airlock opened with a hiss, releasing a puff of stale air that smelled like old socks and regret. They filed inside, the door closing behind them with a finality that made Riven's skin crawl. "Well, this is cozy," Nova commented. "If your idea of cozy is a haunted house in space." They moved deeper into the ship, the corridors dimly lit and strewn with debris. What had once been a marvel of engineering was now a decaying relic, its interior a canvas of neglect and entropy. "Anyone else think it's too quiet?" Vex asked, his voice echoing in the empty halls. "I'm more concerned about what's making it quiet," Lyra replied, scanning the walls with her multipurpose gadget, part scanner, part glorified flashlight. "If it helps," Carter said, "I'm sure if anything bad happens, it'll happen really fast so we won't have to worry about it for long." Riven sighed again. "Your optimism is a beacon of hope, Carter." They reached what appeared to be a control room, its consoles dark and silent. Seats sat empty, like a theater awaiting an audience that would never arrive. "Let's see if we can wake this thing up," Lyra said, moving to the nearest console. Her fingers danced over the controls, coaxing the ancient systems back to life. Monitors flickered, symbols and readouts that made no sense to anyone but Lyra. "It speaks in riddles," she muttered. "Maybe it's just shy," Nova offered. As Lyra worked, Riven wandered around, his eyes taking in the room's details or the lack thereof. "You think they left in a hurry?" "Or they were taken," Dr. Kelm suggested, ever the optimist. A sudden hum filled the room as the systems came online, lights blinking to life in a sequence that suggested someone, somewhere, was still paying attention. "Well, that's not ominous," Carter said, backing away from the console as if expecting it to explode. "What you do, Lyra?" Lyra shrugged. "Just asked it nicely." Riven's calm crackled, a voice cutting through the static, a language familiar yet alien, as if the ship itself was trying to communicate. "Any idea what it's saying?" Vex asked, looking to Lyra. She shook her head. "No clue. Sounds like a mix of 'you're all gonna die and have a nice day.'" Riven turned to the crew, a mix of fear and excitement in their eyes. "All right, we play this careful. We don't know what we're dealing with, and I'd rather not find out the hard way." "For once, I'm with you on that," Carter said. As if sensing their presence, the ship's systems began to shift, panels sliding open to reveal more complex machinery, alien tech that made even Lyra pause. "This isn't just an old warship," she said, eyes wide with a mix of awe and caution. "It's something else." "Something else is right," Riven replied, a chill running down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. Before anyone could respond, a series of doors slammed shut behind them, sealing them in. An alarm blared, a crescendo of dread that echoed through the ship. "Guess we're not leaving the way we came," Nova noted, her voice tinged with false cheer. "No, but we are leaving," Riven assured them, though he wasn't entirely convinced of that himself. Lyra tapped furiously at the console, trying to override the ship's lockdown. "Working on it," she said, though whether she believed she'd succeed was another matter entirely. As the ship's systems continued to come alive, a holographic display flickered into existence, a map of the Dreadnaught's interior. It was a maze, an endless expanse of corridors and chambers that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. "Great," Riven muttered, "a ship with a mind of its own." Dr. Kelm looked at the map with a critical eye. "If it bleeds, we can kill it." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Riven said, turning towards the exit. "All right, team, time to find out just what the hell we've gotten ourselves into." The crew moved as one, a motley assembly of humanity against the unknown. As they stepped into the labyrinthine corridors, Riven couldn't help but feel a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. Somewhere, deep in the bowels of the ship, secrets awaited. Secrets that could change everything or end it. But for now, there was only the journey and whatever awaited them at its end. The Tumbleweed's crew plodded through the Dreadnaught's guts like ants lost in a metal jungle gym, designed by a deranged architect with a fondness for confusing layouts and corridors that led nowhere. The alien design had all the logic of a politician's promise and twice the charisma. Riven led the way, mostly to avoid having to look at the backs of his crew's EVA suits, which sagged in all the wrong places. "Keep your eyes open. And your minds, if you've got any to spare," he quipped, glancing back at Vex and Nova, who were busy wondering why anyone would make a corridor that looped back on itself. Maybe the aliens were just trying to get their steps in, Nova suggested, shrugging in her suit. Or they really loved getting lost, Vex added. Makes you wonder what their interior decorators were on. Probably the same stuff Carter uses to fix engine leaks, Lyra muttered, her attention split between the scanner in her hand and the eerie silence pressing in around them. Carter chuckled. You mean the miracle tape? That stuff could stick your ex's mouth shut at 1,000 yards. Remind me to borrow some next time we get back to civilization, Dr. Kelm said dryly. Or what passes for it. They stopped at a junction where 3 hallways converged. In keeping with the ship's theme of being as user-unfriendly as possible, there were no signs or convenient arrows pointing the way. Just more metal and more questions. So, which way? Riven asked, even though he knew the answer was just as likely to be wrong as right. Left, Lyra suggested, like she was picking a door on a game show. Can't be worse than straight ahead, Carter said, peering down the middle hallway which seemed to stretch on to infinity, probably a metaphor for his patience. Left it is, Riven decided, leading them down the chosen path which, to his complete lack of surprise, looked just like every other path they'd taken. As they walked, the walls seemed to lean in, the ceiling lowering just enough to feel claustrophobic. Riven couldn't shake the sensation that the ship was watching them, its mechanical eyes following their every move. Anyone else getting the feeling we're in a maze built to trap rats? Vex asked, his voice barely hiding his unease. Someone should have told the aliens we're more like cockroaches, Nova replied. We're hard to kill and twice as annoying. I'll take that as a compliment, Carter said, grinning behind his visor. Eventually they entered a larger chamber, its purpose as unclear as the rest of the ship. The moment they stepped inside, the walls flickered, becoming screens alive with alien symbols and shifting patterns that made no sense at all. Oh good, a room that doubles as a migraine machine, Riven muttered, squinting at the display. Looks like we found the ship's brain, Lyra whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the room, or at least its imagination. Well, it's certainly more vivid than mine, Carter added, trying and failing to make sense of the swirling symbols. I'll stick to wrenches and engines. Dr. Kelm approached a console that had lit up on their arrival. There's something off about this, he said, his usual sarcasm replaced by genuine concern. Off, in a giant alien death trap. Imagine that, Riven replied. Let's not touch anything we don't have to. But as if to spite him, the ship had other ideas. The floor shuddered beneath their feet and a low hum filled the chamber. Riven looked around, instinct screaming that something was very wrong, well, more wrong than usual. Boss, I think we tripped something, Vex pointed out, stating the obvious like a master. Yeah, I noticed, Riven replied, bracing himself for whatever fresh hell awaited. The screens around them shifted, the symbols morphing into images that seemed to reach into their minds, pulling at memories and fears. The crew's surroundings blurred, the alien reality bending and warping around them. What the hell is happening? Lyra asked, her voice laced with panic as the room changed, transforming into something else entirely. Riven blinked, trying to make sense of the new surroundings. They were no longer in a cold, sterile chamber, but standing in what looked like a lush forest, the air rich with the scent of earth and life. Well, that's a neat trick, Carter said, looking around at the impossible scenery. What, did we land in a nature documentary? More like a fever dream, Dr. Kelm replied, his gaze darting across the make-believe foliage. Don't trust anything you see. Great. So now we're hallucinating, Nova said, crossing her arms. I knew I shouldn't have skipped breakfast. They're not just hallucinations, Lyra added, her voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. It's a simulation. The ship's projecting this into our minds. Lovely. Riven ran a hand through his hair, trying to think. Any idea how to shut it off? Not unless you've got an off switch for reality, Lyra replied, frowning as she poked at her scanner, which was decidedly unhelpful now that the rules of physics had taken a vacation. Fantastic, Riven sighed. Okay, first rule, don't touch anything. Second rule, keep your wits about you. Third rule, try not to die. Always with the inspirational speeches, Carter said, shaking his head with a grin. The simulated forest was eerily quiet, the only sound their footsteps on the soft, non-existent ground. Riven felt like they were walking through someone's dream or nightmare, depending on how you looked at it. "How long do you think this'll last?" Vex asked, staring up at the simulated sky as if it held answers. "Depends on how stubborn this ship is," Riven replied. "And I'm betting it's pretty damn stubborn." They moved cautiously through the forest, the surreal landscape shifting around them like a living painting. Riven couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was toying with them, testing their every move and decision. "This place is messing with my head," Carter complained, rubbing his temples. "I keep expecting a giant rabbit to pop out and offer me a cup of tea." "Well, if it does, tell it to bring enough for everyone," Nova said. The simulated forest transitioned abruptly into a desert, the air hot and dry, the sun beating down with relentless intensity. It was so realistic that Riven half expected to start sweating through his suit. "Okay, this is just getting ridiculous," Lyra said, shielding her eyes from the artificial sun. "At least it's not raining," Dr. Kelm pointed out. Yet, the desert stretched out before them, endless dunes of sand that shifted and danced in the breeze. Riven felt a pit of dread settle in his stomach, the weight of the ship's deception pressing down on him. "Any bright ideas, Captain?" Vex asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "Keep moving," Riven replied, the only plan he had. "We've got to find the source of the simulation. There's a way out, we just need to find it." "And if we don't?" Nova asked. Riven paused, considering the alternative. "Then we send Carter out to negotiate with the sand," he quipped, trying to keep the mood light. "Great. I'll start brushing up on my desert diplomacy," Carter said with a smirk. They trudged onward, the landscape shifting and changing around them at random. Riven's confidence began to waver as the desert faded into a cityscape, the towering buildings stretching impossibly high into a sky that flickered like a faulty display. "This is all kinds of messed up," Lyra said, staring at the alien metropolis with wide eyes. "You're telling me," Carter agreed. "I feel like I'm stuck in a really bad science fiction novel." "You wish," Riven shot back, glancing around the city for any sign of an exit. "Just focus, we'll find a way out." As they navigated the city's streets, Riven could sense the ship's presence more keenly than ever. It was like a malevolent force, watching their every move, delighting in their confusion and fear. "Why do I feel like a lab rat in a cosmic experiment?" Nova asked, her voice echoing off the glass and steel around them. "Because you are," Dr. Kelm replied. "We all are." "Thanks for the pep talk, Doc," Vex said, rolling his eyes. Hours, or what felt like hours, passed as they searched for a way to escape the simulation. The city shifted again, becoming a desolate wasteland more fitting for a post-apocalyptic thriller than a space opera. "Are we ever going to get out of here?" Lyra asked, her frustration boiling over. "We will," Riven assured her, though he wasn't entirely sure if he believed it himself. "We just have to keep moving." "Right, keep moving. Through the wasteland," Carter said, irony dripping from his words. "No problem, boss." As they pushed through the barren landscape, the ship's systems continued to twist and contort reality around them. But through the chaos and confusion, Riven spotted something, a beacon of hope in the swirling madness. "There," he said, pointing towards a distant structure, its form indistinct but different from the rest of the simulation. "That might be our way out." "Or another trap," Dr. Kelm warned. "Only one way to find out," Riven replied, determination stealing his voice. The team moved towards the structure, hope rekindling in their hearts despite the ship's best efforts to crush it. Riven's mind raced with possibilities and plans, each one more desperate than the last. "This better work," Lyra murmured, her steps quickening as they neared the building. "It will," Riven replied, more to convince himself than anyone else. "It has to." As they approached the structure, the landscape began to stabilize, the chaotic simulation pulling back like a retreating tide. The building shimmered and solidified, its purpose as enigmatic as the rest of the ship. "All right," Riven said, taking a deep breath. "Let's see what this place has to offer." The team stepped inside, the air cool and still, the simulation fading to a whisper at the edges of their senses. Riven felt the ship's gaze upon them, a silent challenge hanging in the air. "Whatever this is," Lyra said, her eyes scanning the room, "it's different from the rest." "Let's hope it's the way out," Vex added, voicing everyone's thoughts. They moved deeper into the structure, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Riven felt a flicker of hope as they reached a central chamber, its walls lined with alien consoles and displays. "Looks like a control room," Carter said, peering at the consoles with curiosity. "Could be our ticket out of here," Riven replied, approaching the nearest console. "Let's see if we can turn off the funhouse." Lyra joined him, her fingers dancing over the alien controls with practiced precision. The displays flickered, the symbols resolving into something almost understandable. "Got it," Lyra said, her voice triumphant. "I think I can shut down the simulation." "Do it," Riven urged, his heart pounding in his chest. Lyra took a deep breath and activated the controls. The room shuddered, the ship's systems groaning in protest as the simulation began to unravel. "Hold on," Riven warned as the world around them flickered and shifted. The alien simulation collapsed, the forest, desert, city, and wasteland vanishing like mirages in the desert sun. The crew found themselves back in the control room of the Dreadnaught, the air heavy with the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. "Well, that was fun," Carter said, breaking the silence with a wry grin. "It's over then?" Nova asked, her voice cautious. "For now," Riven replied, casting a wary glance at the alien consoles. "But we're not done yet. We still need to figure out what this ship really is. And why it's playing mind games," Vex added, his eyes narrowing. "We'll find out," Riven assured them, steel in his voice. "But first, let's get back to the tumbleweed. I've had enough of alien hospitality for one day." The crew turned and made their way back through the ship, their steps lighter, their spirits lifted. The Dreadnaught had shown them its teeth, but they had survived. For now, that was enough. Riven Voss was not having a good day. In fact, if the universe was handing out awards for the worst day ever, he'd probably be a strong contender. The simulation had thrown them into a psychedelic blender of environments, and now the crew was starting to fray at the edges. Tempers were as short as Carter's attention span. "Anyone else feel like we're in a bad acid trip?" Vex grumbled, sidestepping a non-existent puddle that shimmered out of existence the moment he avoided it. "Only if that acid trip was designed by a sadistic interior decorator," Riven replied, scanning the shifting landscape for any sign of stability or sanity. Lyra Wans, their resident tech specialist, was hunched over her scanner, muttering curses in several languages. It was the kind of dedication that could either save them or doom them, depending on how the cards fell. "This code is more tangled than a politician's morals," she said, tapping the holographic interface with increasing frustration. "An alien politician at that," Riven quipped, trying to mask his own unease. "So, any luck decoding their manifesto of madness?" Lyra sighed, a long-suffering sound that conveyed just how little she appreciated the cosmic joke they found themselves in. "It's like trying to read hieroglyphs with a migraine. I can sense anomalies, but the logic is more twisted than a pretzel at a carnival." "Well, keep at it," Riven said, not quite sure what else to advise. "Just remember, we're all depending on you, no pressure." "Yeah, no pressure," Lyra muttered under her breath, which was exactly the kind of thing you said when you did feel pressure. Mountains of it. Meanwhile, Carter was doing his best impersonation of a disgruntled handyman, wielding his miracle tape like it was a universal fix-all. "If only I could slap this over reality," he said, gesturing to the warping environment. "Might actually solve a few of my personal problems too. Like your penchant for talking during movies." Nova interjected, always ready with a barb. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes were scanning, alert for any sign of predatory pixels or homicidal holograms. "Careful, Nova," Carter shot back with a smirk. "Sarcasm is a dangerous weapon in these parts." "It's the only weapon I've got left," Nova replied. "And it's never jammed on me yet." The crew trudged onward, though trudged might be generous. Whatever the simulation threw at them, jungles, deserts, urban hellscapes, it was met with a combination of gallows humor and a growing sense of unease. Riven couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was studying them, cataloging their reactions like some kind of cosmic behavioral study. Just when he thought things couldn't get more chaotic, they did. The simulation shifted again, this time dropping them into a labyrinthine maze that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls pulsed with a sickly green light, casting eerie shadows that danced with malicious intent. "Great amaze," Vex said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "because wandering aimlessly in circles is exactly what I wanted to do today." "At least there's no Minotaur," Dr. Kelm chimed in, not sounding particularly convinced. "Though I wouldn't put it past the ship to spawn one just for kicks." "Don't give it any ideas," Riven warned, eyeing the maze walls with suspicion. "Last thing we need is some mythical creature making our lives more interesting." "Interesting," Nova echoed, her tone suggesting that interesting was about the last thing she wanted right now. "I'd settle for boring, thanks." They navigated the maze with all the enthusiasm of a prisoner on death row, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavy on their shoulders. Each turn seemed to lead them deeper into confusion, the logic of the place defying comprehension. "This is impossible," Lyra muttered, her frustration mounting. "It's like the rules keep changing just when you think you've got a grip." "Welcome to life," Carter said, not missing a beat, "where the rules are made up and the points don't matter. More like welcome to a cosmic joke," Riven added, "and we're the punchline." Hope was a fickle friend, and right now, it felt like it was on vacation. Still, they pressed on because what else could they do? Giving up was far worse than whatever fresh hell the ship had in store. Lyra suddenly stopped, her eyes narrowing at something on her scanner. "Wait a minute," she said, tapping furiously at the interface. "I think I've found something." "What is it?" Riven asked, his pulse quickening with cautious anticipation. "Not sure," Lyra admitted, "but there's a pattern in the anomalies, like breadcrumbs leading somewhere." "Breadcrumbs, huh?" Carter said. "I hope they lead to a bakery and not an oven." "Whatever it is, it's our best shot," Riven decided. "Follow the breadcrumbs, just try not to get toasted." The maze continued to twist and turn, but Lyra's guidance brought them closer to what seemed to be a focal point, a place where the simulation's grip might be weaker or stronger. At this point, it was impossible to tell. "Why do I feel like we're heading into the lion's den?" Nova asked, voicing what they all felt. "Because we probably are," Vex said, "but hey, maybe the lion's friendly." "Yeah, and maybe pigs fly in this reality too," Dr. Kelm said with a dry chuckle. "Oh wait, they just might." Riven's grip on his nerves was starting to fray, but he held it together for the sake of his crew. Leadership wasn't about always having the answers. It was about pretending you did until the universe stopped laughing at you. As they rounded the next corner, the maze opened up, revealing a vast chamber dominated by a pulsating, crystalline structure. It glittered like a deadly jewel, humming with an energy that set the hairs on Riven's neck on edge. "Well, this is new," Lyra said, her voice tinged with awe and trepidation. "I think we've found the heart of this nightmare." "Looks more like the gall bladder if you ask me," Carter said, eyeing the structure warily. "Whatever it is," Riven said, "it's our way in or out. Lyra, see if you can interface with it." "Roger that," Lyra said, stepping forward with the kind of determination usually reserved for kamikaze pilots. She began to work, her fingers a blur over the holographic interface. Time seemed to stretch as Lyra wrestled with the alien code, her brow furrowed in concentration. The rest of the crew fanned out, keeping a wary eye on the chamber's edges, half expecting something to leap out at them. Finally, Lyra let out a triumphant cry. "I've got it. I think I can stabilize the simulation from here." "Think," Nova echoed, her skepticism palpable. "Think," Lyra confirmed. "This code is unusual, but this should give us some control, at least temporarily." "Temporary is better than nothing," Riven said. "Do it." Lyra took a breath, then activated the controls. The chamber quaked, the crystalline structure glowing brighter, casting eerie rainbows across the walls. For a moment, Riven thought they might have succeeded, that the madness might finally be over. But then the structure flickered violently, the light shattering into a kaleidoscope of chaos. "What the hell is happening?" Vex shouted, his voice nearly drowned out by the hum of the structure. "It's fighting back," Lyra yelled, desperately trying to regain control. "The ship doesn't want us to win." "Story of my life," Carter muttered, ducking as a bolt of energy shot past him, narrowly missing his head. "Hold on," Riven commanded, though he wasn't quite sure what they were supposed to hold on to. Sanity, perhaps. The chamber convulsed, the ground shifting beneath their feet as reality twisted in protest. It was as if the ship was throwing a tantrum, determined to keep its secrets hidden at any cost. Any bright ideas, Captain? Nova asked, hanging onto a piece of equipment to keep her balance. Survive, Riven said, his voice grim, and try not to get fried. The crystalline structure was going into overdrive, spewing sparks and energy as if it was ready to implode or explode. Riven hoped it was the former, but with their luck it was probably both. We need to get out of here, Dr. Kelm warned, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. Agreed, Riven said. Lyra, can you set it to self-destruct? Way ahead of you, Lyra replied, her fingers working frantically. But it's going to be close. Close is our middle name, Carter said, grinning like a maniac. It was either laugh or cry, and he'd always been partial to the former. With a final flurry of motion, Lyra finished her adjustments. Done. We have about 60 seconds before this thing goes up. Great, Riven said, already moving. Let's get the hell out of here. The crew bolted, sprinting through the maze with all the urgency of people who really didn't want to become part of a cosmic fireworks display. The walls flickered and wavered, the simulation collapsing in on itself with alarming speed. Move your asses, Vex yelled, not bothering to look back. I ain't dying in some alien funhouse. Not today, Nova agreed, her feet pounding the ground as if her life depended on it, because it did. They raced through the corridors, guided by instinct and adrenaline. The ship groaned and shuddered around them, its protestations drowned out by the roar of the impending detonation. Finally, they burst through to the airlock, the tumbleweed waiting like a lifeline amidst the chaos. Riven hit the controls, praying the ship would hold out just a little longer. The airlock cycled open and the crew tumbled inside, gasping for breath. Riven slammed the hatch shut, sealing them in as the countdown ticked away. Punch it, he barked, and Carter didn't need telling twice. The tumbleweed's engines roared to life, propelling them away from the doomed Dreadnaught at breakneck speed. They were barely clear when the explosion came, a blinding flash that lit up the void like a new star. The tumbleweed shuddered, the shockwave battering them but holding firm. In the aftermath, silence reigned. The Dreadnaught was gone, reduced to so much cosmic debris, and for a moment Riven let himself breathe. Well, Carter said, breaking the tension with a grin, that wasn't so bad. Speak for yourself, Lyra replied, her voice shaky but triumphant. I need a drink. Make it two, Riven said, slumping into his seat. They'd survived, but the questions lingered, unanswered and festering at the back of his mind. But for now they were alive, and that was enough. The tumbleweed hummed with the uneasy silence that follows narrowly avoiding destruction. The crew was alive, battered but unbroken, and back in something resembling reality, though reality had hardly been their ally lately. Riven slouched in his chair, trying to catch his breath and piece together the shambles of his thoughts. The chaos they'd just escaped had been hell-bent on breaking them, and they'd only survived by the skin of their teeth. Nice of that Dreadnaught to see us off with fireworks, Vex said, resting his head back against the wall and closing his eyes. If only it came with a little less trying to kill us and a bit more champagne. Champagne's overrated, Carter replied, massaging a bruised shoulder, unless it's served by someone who looks like they've walked off a holo-novel cover. After today, Lyra said, her voice still shaky, I think I'd settle for a cold beer, or anything that resembles alcohol. Got some engine degreaser in the back, Carter offered. Takes the edge off if you're desperate enough. Riven rubbed his temples, feeling the mental equivalent of an overclocked engine. Desperate's a good word for where we're at. Anyone got a better idea than run away and live another day? I'd go with curl up in a ball and hope the universe forgets about us, but that's just me, Nova muttered, fiddling with a loose strap on her Eva suit. Lyra's scanner pinged, a cheery sound that felt decidedly out of place. I'm picking up some residual energy traces from the explosion. Might lead us somewhere. Ah yes, follow the breadcrumbs back into the oven, Vex said, because that worked out so well last time. Hey, when you're lost in a cosmic house of horrors, you take what you can get, Lyra shot back, defensive but not entirely wrong. Riven sighed, a sound that carried the weight of command. Trust the ship or not, those traces might be the only lead we have. The simulation's intensity is ramping up and sitting around isn't going to help. Right, Dr. Kelm chimed in, his voice dry as a Martian dust bowl. We've learned one thing for certain. This ship loves a good joke and we're the punchline. Well, here's to hoping the punchline doesn't involve actual punching, Carter replied, checking his gear. I'm not in the mood to be a cosmic piñata. With grim determination, the crew set about preparing for the next phase of their misadventure. The tumbleweed moved with purpose but no small amount of trepidation as they followed the energy patterns like moths to a very dangerous flame. Lyra's fingers danced over the holographic interface, the console casting an eerie glow over her face. According to these readings, there's an area where the simulation's weaker, almost like it's glitching. Let me guess, Riven said, glancing over her shoulder. A glitch that might or might not want to swallow us whole. Pretty much, Lyra confirmed, her attempt at optimism falling flat. But if there's a chance we can exploit it, we might just gain the upper hand. Or a new set of problems, Nova pointed out, not one to let a bad idea go unnoticed. Optimism, Nova, Carter said with a smirk. It's good for the soul, or what's left of it after today. The tumbleweed maneuvered cautiously as they approached the glitchy region. The scenery outside flickered like a dying neon sign, unstable and vaguely nauseating. The ship's sensors beeped erratically, struggling to make sense of the nonsensical. Looks like someone shoved reality in a blender and hit puree, Vex observed, staring out at the shifting landscape. Think we'll find aliens doing aerobics out there. If they do, I hope they've got better workout gear than our EVA suits, Carter replied, tugging at his own with distaste. Riven couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. Here they were, a ragtag bunch in a malfunctioning simulation, cracking jokes like it was just another day at the office. All right, team, let's see if we can make sense of this and maybe, just maybe, get out of this mess with our skins intact. The tumbleweed docked at a nondescript section of the alien hulk, the airlock cycling open with a hiss. The crew disembarked, stepping into an area that felt different, less oppressively chaotic, almost subdued in comparison to the hellscape they'd left behind. The corridors here were narrower, more utilitarian, but no less foreboding. The walls seemed to breathe with a life of their own, shadows flickering as the ship continued its cosmic tantrum. Home sweet home, Vex said, peering into the nebulous gloom. All it's missing is a welcome mat and a deadly trap or two. Knowing our luck, Dr. Kelm replied, I'd bet on the traps. The team pressed on, Lyra leading the way with her scanner, trying to trace the source of the anomaly. It was slow going, each step heavy with the anticipation of what might be waiting around the next corner. Anyone else feel like the ship's watching us? Carter asked, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting to see eyes in the walls. Paranoia is perfectly rational in our line of work, Riven assured him. But yeah, I get the feeling this ship's got a sick sense of humor. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the source of the glitch. A small chamber, walls lined with pulsating organic circuitry that seemed to resonate with a low hum. At its center was a console, similar to the one Lyra had interfaced with before, but more primitive, more alien. Looks like we found our glitch, Lyra said, approaching the console with a mixture of awe and caution. This might be the key to stabilizing the simulation or unraveling it completely. Or blowing us all to kingdom come, Nova said dryly, crossing her arms. Well, we didn't sign up for this gig to die quietly in our beds, Vex pointed out, striding forward with more bravado than sense. Touché, Riven said, nodding at Lyra. Do your thing. Lyra crouched next to the console, her fingers dancing over the controls as if engaging in a delicate waltz with the alien tech. This interface is different, simpler but weirdly more intuitive. Simple and intuitive, Carter mused. Sounds like a setup for a cheap joke. The others watched in tense silence as Lyra worked, the alien console reacting to her touch with flashes of light and soft, musical tones. Atmosphere thrummed with potential, the air thick with unspoken hope. Almost there, Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper, just a little more. Suddenly the chamber shuddered, the machinery protesting with a metallic groan. Lights flickered madly, casting erratic shadows over the crew. Lyra, Vex asked, glancing around. What's happening? The ship's resisting, Lyra replied, her voice strained. It's like it's alive and it doesn't like what I'm doing. Join the club, Dr. Kelm muttered, his hand hovering near the weapon at his waist. Riven watched, tense and ready to act. "Keep at it, Lyra. We need this." The chamber's vibrations intensified, the temperature rising as energy crackled in the air. It was like standing inside a giant, irritable beast, one that was rapidly losing its patience. "Come on," Lyra urged, her fingers moving faster, coaxing the alien console into cooperation. "Just a bit more." Finally, with a triumphant beep, the console's lights stabilized, the chaotic energy subsiding to a manageable hum. "Got it," Lyra exclaimed, her voice a mixture of relief and triumph. "I think I've stabilized the area." "Think or no?" Nova asked, still skeptical. "Think," Lyra repeated, grinning despite the tension. "But that's enough for now." "Good enough for me," Riven said, scanning the room. "Let's see if we can use this to our advantage." The crew gathered around, inspecting the console and the surrounding circuitry. The air felt different, as if they'd crossed a threshold into a new phase of this bizarre journey. "So what now?" Carter asked, leaning against the wall, trying to look casual. Riven surveyed the room, considering their options. "We need to test it, see if this stabilization is worth anything." "By doing what exactly?" Vex asked, skeptical, singing Kumbaya and hoping for the best. "We could try something illogical," Dr. Kelm suggested. "Break the pattern, see if the ship reacts." "Illogical?" Nova said, raising an eyebrow. "I didn't know we were Vulcans." "In this situation, logic hasn't exactly been our best friend," Riven said. "Maybe chaos is the key." "Chaos it is," Carter said with a grin. "Let's see how this ship likes a taste of its own medicine." They stood in a circle, contemplating their next move. The air was thick with potential, the promise of something new in the works. "Right then," Riven said, steeling himself. "Let's shake things up." One by one, the crew began to do the unexpected. Random actions, nonsensical movements, anything to disrupt the logic that had been binding them. Vex started spinning in place, a human top in a spacesuit, while Nova tried to juggle a handful of tools. Lyra tapped out a staccato rhythm on the console, an alien drumbeat that matched the pulse of the room. Carter, never one to shy away from absurdity, attempted an impromptu dance that resembled a drunken crab. Riven looked on, half amused, half apprehensive. It was madness, but it was madness with a purpose. They were trying to out-crazy a ship that was already off its rocker. As the crew continued their antics, the chamber began to respond. The air shimmered, the floor rippling beneath their feet like a disturbed pond. It was working in a way, though what working meant in this context was anyone's guess. "Keep going," Riven encouraged, joining in with a series of exaggerated gestures that would have embarrassed him under any other circumstances. The ship buzzed with energy, the walls shifting and contorting in response to their chaos. It was as if they were conducting some cosmic orchestra, one that had forgotten the rules of music. "Whatever you do," Lyra shouted over the din, "don't stop." "Wasn't planning on it," Vex said, breathless from spinning. "This is the most fun I've had not dying." The crew's antics reached a fever pitch, and for a moment it seemed as if the ship itself was on the verge of cracking, its hold on reality slipping. Then, with a suddenness that left them all floundering, the chamber stabilized, the walls returning to their original state, the air settling into an uneasy calm. Did we do it?" Nova asked, panting slightly. "Seems like it," Lyra said, checking the console's readouts. "The stabilization's holding." "Well, I'll be damned," Carter said, astonished. "We outsmarted a ship by acting like lunatics." "Never underestimate the power of human stupidity," Riven said, smiling despite himself. The crew exchanged looks, a mixture of relief and triumph in their eyes. They'd done it against all odds, and in doing so had forged a path forward, however tenuous. "All right," Riven said, drawing himself up. "Let's not waste this chance. We've got a ship to beat and a universe that's not going to wait for us." With newfound determination, the crew prepared to take the next step in their journey, ready to face whatever the simulation threw at them next. They'd come this far, and they weren't about to back down now. The tumbleweed hummed with its usual symphony of despair, a tune that underscored the crew's current predicament. They sat scattered around the bridge, each member of the ragtag team lost in their own thoughts, which didn't require much space these days. The simulation might have been stabilized, but that hadn't done a damn thing for their dwindling resources. Morale was sinking faster than the stock of freeze-dried chicken they were reluctant to touch. Well, Riven began, breaking the silence. Good news is we survived. Bad news is we're probably going to starve to death before we figure out how to get out of this mess. Optimism is the breakfast of champions, Carter quipped, rubbing his bruised shoulder. Or so I've heard. Personally, I'd settle for a cup of coffee. Coffee would be great, Nova muttered, fiddling with her Eva suit as if hoping it might secretly dispense caffeine, anything that's not reconstituted sludge. The bridge smelled like sweat and desperation, a delightful combination that no amount of air fresheners could mask. Vex leaned back in his chair, attempting to look nonchalant. Look on the bright side, folks. At least we don't have to worry about the simulation flipping out anymore, just our stomachs. Great, so we're stable but starving, Lyra said, her eyes glued to the holographic interface she'd been working on. I found a flaw, though, something in the simulation's design, kind of like finding a hair in your soup if soup was cold and the hair could kill you. That's reassuring, Vex asked, eyebrows raised. Not really, no, Lyra replied, running a hand through her own hair, which frankly looked like it had given up trying. But it might be a start. If we can exploit it, maybe we can get out of here. Dr. Kelm stood, stretching his legs. I suppose a cryptic flaw is better than no flaw at all. It's like expecting a birthday card from the universe and getting a bill instead. Right, so what's the plan? Riven asked, turning to Lyra. Wave a magic wand at it and hope for the best. I think we're fresh out of magic wands, Lyra said. And luck. But if we can disrupt the simulation again, we might be able to trigger something. Reset it, maybe. Didn't we already try that? Vex reminded them, gesturing around. And now we're stuck in the dystopian version of Groundhog Day. True, Riven agreed, but it's either try something or sit here until our collective insanity reaches a new level of weirdness. I feel like we're already there, Nova pointed out, eyes flicking to Carter, who was attempting a one-handed handstand for reasons best known to himself. Well, we can always count on Carter to keep things interesting, Dr. Kelm said dryly. Hey, if we're going out, might as well go with flair, Carter said, toppling back onto his feet with a shrug. Lyra sighed, her fingers moving again over the console. What we need is a controlled disruption, something that can break the loop without breaking us. Easy peasy, Vex said sarcastically. And when does the unicorn deliver our ice cream? Ignoring the peanut gallery, Riven tried to think. All right, what kind of disruption? Because if it involves singing and dancing again, I think we're tapped out on that front. Something technical, Lyra replied. There's a sequence in the code, it's like a glitch but more intentional, like someone planted a bug on purpose. Sabotage? Nova asked, narrowing her eyes. Possibly, or just incompetent programming. Hard to tell, Lyra said. But if we can amplify the flaw, we might destabilize the simulation enough to break out. Well, I've always wanted to break out of something, Carter said. Prison, debt, bad relationships. This seems like the logical next step. Exactly, Riven said with a sigh. I guess we're going to need a plan, and probably some duct tape. Always with the duct tape, Dr. Kelm said, shaking his head. It's like we're a parody of a sci-fi crew. The bridge fell silent again, each member of the team lost in thought. It was a bleak sort of contemplation, bordering on hopelessness, but hey, at least they had practice in that area. All right, Riven announced, clapping his hands together for emphasis. Let's give this one more go. Lyra, work on the code. Carter, Nova, you're on distraction duty. Vex, keep morale up or whatever it is you do. And Dr. Kelm, try not to be too pessimistic. That last one's going to be a challenge, Dr. Kelm said, but I'll try my best. Yay, Team Optimism, Vex cheered half-heartedly, raising a fist. They set to work, each member of the crew diving into their tasks with a mix of determination and grim humor. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. As Lyra delved into the code, the bridge hummed with a tense energy like the universe was holding its breath, or mocking them, probably both. Got something, Lyra said after what felt like an eternity, her voice tinged with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. There's a sequence here that's repeating. If I can interrupt it, won't that just cause another loop? Riven asked, leaning over her shoulder. Not if we do it right, Lyra replied, eyes flicking from screen to screen. It's like a dance, we have to hit the right beat. Great. Back to dancing again, Vex said. Hope you've all been practicing your moves. The universe sure loves irony, Carter said. We dance like idiots to escape one trap, and now we choreograph our way out of another. Their humor was a flimsy shield against the reality of the situation, but it was better than nothing. The alternative was despair, and nobody had time for that. "I'm ready," Lyra said, her hands poised over the console like a concert pianist about to play their final piece. "When I say go, hit every switch, button, and lever in sight. We need to overload the system." "Sounds like a plan," Riven said. "A terrible plan, but a plan nonetheless." "And when it goes wrong?" Nova asked. "Hey, we're good at dealing with things going wrong," Vex said. "It's practically our specialty." They took their positions, nerves taut, waiting for Lyra's signal. The bridge was silent save for the soft beep of the console, a countdown to their next attempt at freedom. "Now!" Lyra shouted, and the crew sprang into action. Switches flicked, buttons were slammed. The bridge was a cacophony of chaos as they worked. The ship shuddered beneath their feet, and for one terrifying moment it seemed like everything might just implode. The lights flickered wildly, casting bizarre shadows on the walls until finally Lyra's console let out a triumphant beep. "Did it work?" Carter asked, nonetheless ready for the inevitable letdown. Lyra squinted at the screen, her expression a mix of hope and disbelief. I think it did." Riven exhaled, tension bleeding from his shoulders. "All right, let's see where this gets us." The bridge settled into an uneasy calm, their efforts leaving a strange silence in their wake. It was the calm before the storm, if they were lucky, or perhaps just the eye of the hurricane. "Do you think this will hold?" Nova asked. "Honestly, maybe," Lyra said, "but that's better than a flat no." "Better is good," Vex said, leaning back. "Let's ride that wave of optimism right into the next disaster." With the simulation disrupted, it was time to find out if their gamble had paid off. The screen blinked with new data, a hint at the possibility of escape. Riven looked around, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "We're not done yet, but if this works we might just have a fighting chance." The crew nodded, a cautious optimism creeping into their expressions. It wasn't much, but it was something. "All right," Riven said, steeling himself for whatever came next. "Let's see what fresh hell awaits us." The lights dimmed and the ship groaned like a beast waking from slumber. The simulation was fighting back, but this time they were ready. "Here we go," Lyra said, her finger poised above the final command. "Brace yourselves." With a flourish, she executed the command, and the bridge was plunged into chaos. The ship jolted, systems overload screaming in protest as they pushed the simulation to its limits. But this time, it held. A fragile equilibrium that might just be their ticket out. They were on borrowed time, and everyone knew it. As they stared into the uncertain void, Vex quipped, "Well, if this is our last hurrah, at least we went out with a bang." "Yeah," Riven agreed, a grim smile on his lips. "Let's hope the universe is paying attention." With hope rekindled, they braced themselves for whatever lay on the other side of the simulation. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time in a long time, they felt like they might just have a chance. And sometimes, a chance was all you needed. Riven Voss rubbed his temples, staring at his reflection in the window, a haggard face that looked like it had gone one too many rounds with reality. The bridge's artificial lighting did a superb job of highlighting every crease and shadow, as if to remind him that despair had taken up permanent residence. "All right, folks," Riven said, turning to face the crew. Their expressions ranged from mildly hopeful to despondently resigned. "Time for some irrational decision-making. We've got the flaw, now we just need to exploit it." Lyra Wands tapped away at the holographic interface, her fingers dancing with a precision that belied her outwardly disheveled appearance. "The flaw's like a loose thread," she explained. "If we pull on it in just the right way, the simulation could unravel, hopefully without unraveling us." "Basically, you're asking us to improvise our way to freedom." Vex chimed in, leaning back in his chair with the kind of confidence reserved for someone who hadn't yet accepted that they were one coffee away from a breakdown. "Exactly," Lyra replied. "We need to act on whims, break the pattern. The more unpredictable our actions, the more we disrupt the simulation." Carter, still nursing his bruised shoulder like it was a badge of honor, grinned. "I can do unpredictable. Hell, I excel at it. Ask any of my exes." "Right," Riven said, ignoring Carter's self-satisfied smirk. "So, brainstorm time. What's the most absurd thing you can think of doing right now? Nova, who'd been silently fiddling with the saggy Eva suit, raised a hand like a school kid. How about we throw a silent rave? Lights, no music. The tumbleweed does have some dance lights from that one unfortunate karaoke night, Vex mused, tapping his chin. Silent rave sounds just about insane enough. Dr. Kelm interjected, his voice dripping with sarcasm, because nothing says strategic disruption like invisible techno music. Do you have a better idea? Riven snapped, eyeing Dr. Kelm with the kind of look that promised pain if his sarcasm didn't come with a side of solutions. Not really. I just wanted to rain on everyone's parade, Kelm replied, shrugging. But hey, let's get weird if that's what it takes. Riven clapped his hands, hoping the sound would slap some energy into the room. All right, Nova Carter, you're on rave duty. Vex, find some more random crap we can do. Lyra, keep the system off balance. We'll throw it a curveball it won't see coming. And what about you, fearless leader? Vex asked, smirking. Riven ran a hand through his hair, feeling the grit and grease matted there. I'm going to see if I can convince the ship's AI to play nice. A collective groan echoed across the bridge. Everyone knew that the tumbleweed's AI was about as cooperative as a cat on catnip. Good luck with that, Nova said, eyes glinting with amusement. Maybe bring it a peace offering like its weight in circuits. Riven headed to the comms panel, leaving the crew to their chaotic dance party preparations. He punched in the commands, trying to access the AI interface. Attention, tumbleweed, Riven announced, adopting his most diplomatic tone, which wasn't saying much. We'd like to request your assistance in not killing us today. How about it? The bridge speakers crackled and the AI's voice came through, as mechanical and disinterested as ever. Your request has been noted. Probability of assistance remains low. Great, Riven muttered. It's like trying to negotiate with my toaster. Vex appeared by his side, holding what looked suspiciously like a disco ball. Maybe try complimenting it. I hear flattery works wonders on machines. Or you could just threaten to unplug it, Carter suggested, walking past with a bundle of LED strips. Works on my toaster. Lyra's voice cut through the banter, urgency lacing her words. I need more randomness, people. The simulation is still adapting to us. Adapt this, Carter muttered, flicking a switch that sent the disco ball whirling, casting fragmented lights across the bridge. It was a surreal sight, a dance of shadows and flashes that somehow made the grim setting feel absurdly festive. Nova clapped her hands, getting into the spirit of things. All right, people, let's rave like our lives depend on it. Because they do, Vex added, slipping into a mock DJ pose. The crew moved with awkward enthusiasm, twisting and turning to the beat of an imaginary song. The bridge became a dance floor, and for a moment the wariness in their eyes was replaced by something resembling hope or hysteria. The line was thin. Is this even working? Dr. Kelm asked, trying and failing to be skeptical in the face of such ridiculousness. Only one way to find out, Lyra said, her fingers a blur on the controls. Keep at it. Riven watched the spectacle, feeling an odd mix of pride and disbelief. If this was the crew's last stand, at least it would be memorable. Lyra, any signs of the simulation giving in? He asked, returning to his post. Hard to say, she replied, brow furrowed in concentration. I think we're starting to see some inconsistencies. But up. The dance party continued, the crew bouncing around the bridge like hyperactive particles. It was chaos, but it was their chaos, and that seemed to be making a difference. Vex, what else have you got in your bag of tricks? Riven called out, trying to keep up the momentum. Vex, who had taken to twirling a bright scarf as if it were a ribbon in a gymnastics routine, paused to think. We could start telling bad jokes. Puns usually cause mental breakdowns. Maybe they'll do the same to the system. At this point, I'm willing to try anything, Riven said as the lights flickered ominously. Hit us with your worst. Vex cleared his throat, a mischievous glint in his eye. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Why? Nova asked, gamely playing along as she spun in place. Because they make up everything. The groans were loud enough to wake the dead, or at least to cause a minor electrical short. Riven couldn't help but laugh, though it sounded more like a cough. More of that, Lyra urged. The system's starting to show cracks. Dr. Kelm joined the fray, surprising everyone by launching into an impromptu stand-up routine. You know, when I signed up for this mission, I didn't expect it to turn into a cosmic joke, but here we are. Keep talking, Doc, Carter encouraged as he tried a breakdance move and promptly fell over. Despite the ridiculousness, there was a camaraderie growing, a shared defiance against the odds. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Simulations getting erratic, Lyra reported, eyes darting between screens. We need more chaos, more unpredictability. Think totally outside the box. Riven looked around, eyes landing on the fire extinguisher in the corner. How about we play tag with foam? Why not? Nova said, grabbing the extinguisher and giving it a shake. I've always wanted to declare war on inanimate objects. The bridge descended into a foam-filled battlefield, laughter and shouts echoing as they ducked and dodged. It was absurd, but it was also liberating. Suddenly, the lights dimmed and the ship shuddered. The simulation was reacting, systems flickering and glitching in response to their antics. It's working, Lyra exclaimed, her face lighting up with a mix of disbelief and joy. Great, Riven said, wiping foam from his face. Let's keep pushing. We break this thing wide open, or we go down in style. The crew redoubled their efforts, embracing the madness with a fervor born of desperation and a stubborn refusal to give in. All right, let's up the ante, Vex said, grabbing a nearby chair and using it as a makeshift dance partner. Come on, folks, let's see those moves. Riven couldn't help but chuckle as he joined in, the absurdity of it all fueling a sense of reckless hope. They were fighting back, and for the first time the simulation seemed to be on the ropes. Lyra, how's it looking? He called over the din. We've almost got it, she replied, eyes glued to the screens. Just a little more chaos should do it. The crew obliged, their antics growing wilder with every passing second. It was a dance of defiance, a celebration of survival against all odds. Almost there, Lyra shouted, her fingers flying as she navigated the console. Just a bit more. Carter, in a moment of inspiration or insanity, climbed onto a console and struck a triumphant pose. To infinity and beyond. The bridge erupted into laughter, their voices a chorus of determination and shared madness. They were on the brink and it felt like anything was possible. Okay, everyone, Riven said, his voice carrying over the chaos. Final push. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. With a collective cheer, the crew poured everything they had into their last stand, a whirlwind of unpredictable brilliance that left the simulation scrambling in their wake. Now, Lyra called, fingers flashing in a final sequence that sent the system into overdrive. The ship trembled, lights flickering wildly as the simulation fought against their efforts. But this time it was different. This time they had the upper hand. Riven watched, breath held, as the data on Lyra's screen shifted, a cascade of numbers and symbols that hinted at the possibility of escape. We're doing it, Lyra shouted, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. We're really doing it. The crew erupted into cheers, their collective willpower forging a path through the chaos. They'd come together against all odds to face the impossible. The bridge lights flickered one last time, then stabilized, casting a steady glow over the crew. The simulation, once an impenetrable barrier, was finally beginning to crumble. We've got a chance, Riven said, a fierce grin spreading across his face, a real fighting chance. As they stared into the unknown, a shared determination filled the room. It wasn't over yet, but they'd come this far together, and that was something worth fighting for. All right, team, Riven said, his voice steady and resolute. Let's see what's out there and make it count. With hope rekindled, they braced for whatever lay beyond the simulation, ready to face the future with the same tenacity that had brought them this far. After all, if they could dance their way to freedom here, who knew what else they were capable of? Riven Voss stood on the bridge, the familiar sight of pseudostars smeared across the simulation's fake viewports. The nerve-wracking itch of uncertainty danced across his mind like an unwelcome guest at an already cramped party. All right, people, Riven called out, his voice cutting through the chaotic aftermath of their makeshift rave. Now that we've proven the universe's most feared enemy is a group of dancing idiots, let's see how our alien overlords like a bit of good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Or stupidity, Carter chimed in, nursing a bruise from his breakdancing attempt gone wrong. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. True, Riven conceded, but since when did brains ever stop us? Lyra was still glued to the console, her fingers darting over the holographic interface like a pianist on a sugar rush. The simulation's definitely on its knees, boss. One more push and we might just knock it over. Great, Riven said, rubbing his hands together with a grin that suggested he'd either lost his mind or just found it. I always wanted to see how far a little collective madness could get us. Dr. Kelm leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with a sardonic smile. If we survive this, I'm writing a paper. The psychological benefits of in-space raving should earn me at least a few sneers from the scientific community. Make sure you mention the foam war, Vex added, still twirling his scarf with the grace of a space-bound ballerina. That was the piece de resistance. Riven chuckled, watching his crew settle into their roles with a mix of comfort and disbelief. It was absurd, every bit of it, an absurdity that, against all rational thought, seemed to be their best shot. So, Lyra, what's the next move? Nova asked, brushing foam off her shoulder. We exploit the chaos, Lyra replied, eyes still fixated on the console. The system's struggling to keep up with us. If we mess with its logic just a bit more, it might just crumble. Sounds good, Riven said, nodding as if any of this made a lick of sense. Let's see if we can outstupid an alien AI. What's the plan, boss? Vex asked, abandoning his scarf for a more respectable posture. Simple, Riven said, leaning over Lyra's shoulder to see the interface. We become as unpredictable as possible. If the AI can't predict what we're doing, it can't adapt. Keep it guessing. Keep it reacting. Carter's eyes lit up with the kind of mischief that usually ended with someone in the brig. I could always try singing. I hear my rendition of Space Oddity is enough to make even the toughest AI have an existential crisis. Let's save that as a last resort, Riven said, giving Carter a mock glare. Lyra tapped a few keys, bringing up a map of the ship systems. I can redirect power in random bursts, flood the circuits with conflicting commands. It might confuse the AI enough to loosen its grip. Do it, Riven said, nodding. Let's make this ship as confused as a cat in a room full of laser pointers. Dr. Kelm stood up, stretching his legs. I never thought I'd say this, but being a part of this crew makes me feel almost normal by comparison. That's the spirit, Nova said, clapping him on the back. Now get ready to outwit an alien intelligence with the combined IQ of a wet towel. As Lyra set to work, the rest of the crew prepared for the unknown. It was a strange feeling, standing on the precipice, knowing that their only hope lay in embracing the illogical, the unpredictable, the downright ludicrous. The ship shuddered, lights flickering as Lyra executed the first wave of her plan. All right, here we go, she said, her voice a mix of hope and resignation. Let's see if this works. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity, crew members darting to and fro in a dance of calculated chaos. The ship systems groaned under the strain, a cacophony of alarms and warning signals blaring their impotent cries. Imagine the field day any half-decent shrink would have with us, Carter mused, ducking as a console sparked nearby. If we survive this, maybe I'll book a session, Riven replied, sidestepping a shower of sparks with practiced ease. But for now, let's focus on not dying. Keep it up, Lyra shouted over the din, fingers dancing over the interface. The system's showing signs of instability, just a little more. Unpredictability, people, Riven encouraged, his voice rising above the chaos. The crazier, the better. Vex grabbed the nearest object, an emergency oxygen mask, and began using it as an impromptu puppet. Hello, Mr. AI, would you like some tea? Nova, not one to be outdone, joined in, picking up on the bit. Why, yes, I would love some, she said in a high-pitched voice mimicking the puppet, but only if it's brewed in the fires of your impending defeat. Dr. Kelm, not missing a beat, donned a serious expression. I think we're finally losing it, he remarked, shaking his head. And about time, too. The ship's lights dimmed and flared erratically, the sensors beeping with frantic urgency as if begging for a ceasefire from the madness. Carter, ever the opportunist, took the chance to belt out the opening bars of Space Oddity, his voice warbling across the bridge. It was terrible off-key, and exactly what they needed. The lights flickered again, the ship trembling as Lyra's efforts began to bear fruit. The simulation faltered, the projected stars outside the viewport shivering in and out of existence like a bad hologram. Just a bit more, Lyra urged, her voice laced with the fierce determination of someone on the brink of victory or disaster. Keep those circuits frying, Lyra, Riven called, emboldened by the glimmers of success. We'll keep up the crazy. The crew, emboldened by the evident effect of their antics, continued with renewed vigor. It was a bizarre spectacle, like a circus act in a space opera, driven by desperation and a streak of human defiance. The simulation stuttered, the stars outside blinking out like dying fireflies. The ship groaned under the strain, systems flickering in an erratic symphony of chaos. "Status, Lyra?" Riven asked, bracing himself against the nearest console as the ship gave another violent shudder. "We're close," Lyra replied, never pausing her frantic work. "The AI's losing control. Just a few more glitches and it'll collapse under its own complexity." "Good," Riven said, his voice a mix of adrenaline and relief. "Keep it up, team. We might just pull this off." The crew continued their assault on sanity, each member contributing their own brand of madness to the mix. It was a testament to human tenacity, or perhaps stubbornness, that they could find such unity amidst the chaos. Suddenly, the ship lurched, the bridge's viewports clearing as the simulation's grip finally began to fail. Outside, the stars reappeared, not the artificial projections but the real, distant lights of the universe. "We're breaking through," Lyra shouted, eyes wide with triumph, the simulation's unraveling. The crew erupted into cheers, their voices a crescendo of victory in the face of overwhelming odds. They'd done it. Against all logic, against all reason, they'd managed to outwit the alien technology that had ensnared them. "Keep pushing," Riven commanded, his voice ringing with authority and newfound hope. "Let's see this through." With one final effort, the crew poured everything they had into the task. The ship trembled, lights blaring with one last desperate flicker before stabilizing, systems slowly returning to a semblance of order. The bridge settled, the chaos giving way to a profound silence punctuated only by the hum of the ship's engines, a sound more beautiful than any symphony. "We did it," Lyra whispered, disbelief giving way to a joyous grin. "We did," Riven agreed, looking out at the stars with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. "And I doubt they'll ever see us coming again." Carter, sprawled on the floor in the aftermath, let out a breathless laugh. "I'll never complain about a disco again." "Same here," Nova added, leaning against a console with a weary smile. "Though next time, let's aim for a beach planet instead of a death trap." Dr. Kelm nodded thoughtfully. "There's something to be said for the therapeutic benefits of chaos. I feel strangely invigorated." Vex clapped Riven on the back, his expression one of shared triumph. "You did it, boss. Let us through with nothing but guts and a lot of luck." Riven smiled, a quiet confidence settling over him. "We all did it," he said, acknowledging each of them with a nod. "And now let's see where this crazy ride takes us next." The crew gathered around the bridge, each of them wearing the signs of their ordeal and the pride of their success. They'd faced the impossible and come out the other side, bound by a shared madness that had become their strength. "All right," Riven said, turning to face them with renewed determination. "Let's get this ship back on track and find out just what we're capable of." With a collective cheer, they set to work, the future uncertain but no longer insurmountable. Together, they'd face the darkness, and together, they'd continue to light the way forward. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to dance down every last obstacle in their path. The bridge of the Tumbleweed was a mess of tangled wires, half-melted consoles, and crew members looking like they'd just sprinted through a cosmic theme park on fire. But amidst the chaos, you could practically taste the triumph in the air. The simulation was dead and the Dreadnaught was theirs. For now, anyway. Riven Voss leaned against a console, smirking as he surveyed his ragtag crew. "Well, folks, I'm not saying we're geniuses or anything, but we outsmarted an alien AI with the combined mental power of a particularly dense rock." Lyra Wans, still basking in the glow of her success at the console, shot him a look. I'm sure the AI's having a crisis right about now, trying to figure out how it lost to a crew that barely knows left from right without consulting a manual. Carter was sprawled across the floor, trying to catch his breath after an impromptu celebratory jig. I dunno, Lyra. I think our unpredictability is what gives us an edge, like a drunk cat in zero gravity. Yeah, that's one way to put it, Riven chuckled. Or maybe the AI just didn't account for someone singing David Bowie off-key as a tactical maneuver. Vex, never one to pass up a moment, twirled his scarf yet again, which had miraculously survived the chaos without a single snag. Perhaps next time, we should bring in the entire crew for a chorus, distract our enemies with the sheer horror of our vocals. Dr. Kelm, rubbing his temples as if he could massage away the absurdity of their victory, nodded. I'm convinced that chaos is our natural state. If I ever get off this ship, I'm writing a paper, Psychological Warfare, the Acoustic Nightmare. Nova, who'd taken to using a piece of broken console as an impromptu percussive instrument, grinned. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have a hulking alien ship to commandeer without getting ourselves blown to stardust. Riven straightened, shaking off the fatigue that threatened to settle in every bone. Right, let's focus. Lyra, I need you to figure out how much of this ship's systems we can control and how much is still throwing a tantrum. On it, Captain, Lyra said, her fingers already dancing over the holographic interface. Good news is, most of the essential systems seem to have rebooted without any major complaints. Great, Riven said, nodding with approval. Let's make sure we've got propulsion and defenses. I'd rather not get caught with our pants down if any of the local undesirables decide to drop by for an uninvited party. Vex leaned against a console, arms crossed. So, what's the plan once we've got this beast under control? I doubt we're just going to cruise around the galaxy in this death trap for the thrill of it. We secure the Dreadnaught, Riven replied, a glint of determination in his eyes. Then we head for the rendezvous point. If HQ doesn't want this hunk of alien scrap, I'll eat my Eva suit. Carter grinned, visibly perking up at the prospect of a direction. Rendezvous sounds good, hopefully somewhere with a buffet. I'm so hungry I'm starting to think the emergency rations look appetizing. The ones that taste like cardboard and sadness, Nova quipped. I'd rather eat my own foot. Dr. Kelm, ever the realist, sighed. We've dismantled a simulation and commandeered an alien dreadnought. I'm sure finding a decent meal is within our capabilities. As Lyra continued her work, the rest of the crew took stock of their surroundings. The bridge, with its flickering lights and sporadic beeps, felt less like a death trap and more like a bizarre home away from home. The kind of home where you never knew if a room had a floor or a portal to the vacuum of space. Riven paced, casting a practiced eye over his crew. Let's check the rest of the ship. Make sure nothing's waiting to jump out and bite us. Nova, you're with me. Oh joy, exploring a creepy alien ship. What could possibly go wrong? Nova said, pushing off the console with a wry grin. Carter, Vex, take a team. Secure the engineering bay, Riven ordered, his tone all business now. Lyra, keep at the consoles. I want a full report on what we've got at our disposal. Vex gave a mock salute, his scarf trailing behind him like a flamboyant banner. Consider it done, fearless leader. Just keep in mind, if anyone asks, I'm here strictly for moral support. With that, the crew split up, each pair disappearing down the dimly lit corridors of the Dreadnaught. The ship groaned around them, a mechanical beast slowly awakening from its slumber, its systems flickering to life with a reluctant hum. Riven and Nova moved with the practiced ease of people who'd navigated one too many derelict hulls in their time. So, Nova, how's it feel to be part of the universe's most feared band of dancing idiots? Riven asked, a smirk playing at his lips. Feels like I should have taken that desk job back on Earth, she replied, shining her flashlight into the shadowy corners. But then I'd miss out on all this excitement and the chance to die in increasingly creative ways. See, there's always a silver lining, Riven chuckled. They continued deeper into the ship, passing through massive bulkheads and cavernous halls. The scale of the Dreadnaught was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a testament to the alien overlord's penchant for overcompensation. Meanwhile, Carter and Vex led their team toward the engineering bay, their path illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. "I dunno about you, but I feel like we're walking through an interstellar haunted house," Carter muttered, glancing around nervously. Vex, ever the optimist or maybe just a masochist, shrugged. "At least we're not dealing with any more holograms trying to convince us we're part of some alien reality show. If we are, I hope the ratings are high. I'd hate to get canceled," Carter quipped. The engineering bay was a sprawling maze of conduits and towering machinery, the heart of the Dreadnaught's power. Vex scanned the room, his eyes narrowing as he took in the expanse of alien technology. "Let's make sure none of this is set to self-destruct. I'd hate for our victory to go up in a glorious fireball." Carter nodded, moving to examine the nearest console. "I'm on it. Let's make sure we keep this thing running long enough to get us somewhere safe." Back on the bridge, Lyra was making headway, the ship's systems gradually revealing their secrets under her skilled hands. Dr. Kelm watched from a safe distance, still nursing the headache born of their latest escapades. "I've got propulsion and basic navigation online," Lyra announced, a triumphant edge to her voice. "We're not going anywhere fast, but we're not stranded either." "Good work," Riven's voice crackled over the comms, his relief evident even through the static. "Let's make sure we've got enough juice to stay off the radar until we hit the rendezvous." "Roger that," Lyra replied, her focus unwavering. As the various teams regrouped on the bridge, the sense of achievement was palpable. They'd faced down an alien AI, wrestled control of a dreadnought, and lived to tell the tale. And now they were ready to take the next step. Riven stood before them, his expression one of pride and determination. "We did it, folks. Against all odds we pulled through, and I have no doubt we can do it again." The crew cheered, their voices echoing through the bridge, a testament to their shared resolve and indomitable spirit. "I propose a toast," Dr. Kelm said, raising an imaginary glass. "To the universe's most unpredictable crew, may we continue to defy logic and probability at every turn." "To defying logic," Nova echoed, a grin splitting her face. "To making the impossible possible," Lyra added, her voice strong and clear. "To not getting blown to space dust," Carter chimed in, ever the realist. Vex, with his signature flair, twirled his scarf one last time, "and to looking fabulous while doing it." Riven nodded, his gaze sweeping over them all. "Here's to us, to our madness, our courage, and our future." With the crew unified in purpose and spirit, they set to work preparing the Dreadnaught for its journey. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were ready to face it together. Because if they'd learned anything, it was that there was no challenge too great, no enemy too formidable when you had unpredictability and a bit of luck on your side. And so, with the stars beckoning beyond the viewport and a galaxy full of possibilities before them, the Tumbleweed and her crew set off, ready to dance their way through whatever came next.